Okay, I think we could go ahead and get started, Chris, when you're ready, and then if people join, we'll catch them up.
Okay. Good morning. How is everyone? Good to see you. Thanks. I see a couple waves back. That always feels good. Like you sit here sometimes and you're like, did anybody just hear what I said? So Dale, thanks for waving back there. I appreciate it. Well, my name's Chris Schimmel, and I have been working with Emily, AmeriCorps, and Ed Alliance now for what, Emily, 5-6 years, probably?
I would say so.
Yeah, and I always enjoy the time that we get to spend. It looks a little different this year, right, because of COVID and all this virtual exchange of ideas, but I'm happy to spend some time with you this morning. I think what you do in the schools is really important. We have in the past looked at some data around the project that you're engaged with mentoring students, with working in the community. And we found some pretty solid results, solid enough that we've even published, we've had an article published in an Ed Psych journal about the impact of the mentoring program that most of you or a lot of you are involved in. So yeah, I am a school counselor by training. My passion is kids in school. How many of you are, or Emily, clarify for me, is everybody on today part of the mentoring program?
Yes, well, Dale is helping out, but everyone else is currently a mentor.
Okay. So yeah, I've really spent my life devoted to my work the last 25, 26 years, supporting kids in schools, helping kids achieve in school. And I think although there are a lot of things that we hope you can accomplish by mentoring and working with kids in schools, one of them is just success, right? And we want kids to be successful, whatever that looks like for them. That's exponentially harder right now for kids, even kids who traditionally don't struggle to be successful or well-balanced mentally and socially and emotionally. A lot of kids are struggling right now with remote learning, depression, anxiety, fears about COVID. Would you agree with that? That a lot of kids have exacerbated concerns. Many of us have exacerbated concerns over those things, or maybe you have your own children at home that are really struggling to stay on track or stay balanced or stay, physically, functioning. So what we know about kids and what we've seen is that over the last 10 years, and there's some statistics that you can look at on the Center for Disease Control, that we know that about 60% of our kids in public schools suffer from some sort of either behavioral, mental health, or developmental disorder. Right? They have a learning disability or something that impacts their success. What we know too, that over the last 10 years, those disorders and those issues are showing up in combination with each other. So in the counseling world, we call that they have comorbid disorders. So you don't just have anxiety, but maybe you have anxiety and a reading disorder. You don't just have anxiety or depression, you have anxiety and depression and some kind of behavioral disorder like attention deficit disorder. So look, here's the thing. This is going to come down to you getting out into schools and building relationships with kids. And sometimes it's going to be really hard because kids are facing a lot of really difficult challenges. Thumbs up if you would agree with that you know that you're already seeing it, right? They're facing a lot of very difficult challenges. So this is where we're going to start this morning. Yeah, I want to start because I try to be, even virtually, I try to be engaging and entertaining and show you things that I think are going to grab your attention. Some of you maybe have seen the video. I want to show a video. Maybe some of you have seen it, but I've seen this video probably 100 times over the last 5 years, 4 years. I never tire of watching this video. And I think that it really fits for what your task is to go out into the world and work with these kids. So we're going to start with a video because it's interesting and I think it's fantastic. So Emily and I tested this and we found that it was working. You might want to turn the volume up as far as you can on your device. My volume on my side is up as far as I can go. So if you're having trouble, probably the only thing I can offer you is try to get your device up a little higher. So let's start with this.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connections, relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. Ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologize. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that piece of addition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. I said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to
Chris, you have to unmute yourself for people to hear it.
all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk. And years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Okay, what did you think? Thumbs up if you enjoyed that.
Oh, she's unbelievable. She's fantastic.
Isn't that fantastic? Okay, so here's what I want you to do is I have made some breakout rooms. Let me check these breakout rooms here. Mandy says, love the video. Good. Let me see. Emily, we have about 21 people on. Is that right? Did we lose Emily?
Yes, I think there's a little bit less than that actually on, but approximately.
Let me see what happens if I make 4. Here we go. Okay, here's what I'd like for you to do. And I've been teaching online since about March. So I find that one of the things that my students really enjoy is just the ability to share ideas. And sometimes that's a little easier in smaller groups. So I'm going to send you to breakout rooms, and hopefully you're familiar with this technology. I'm going to open these rooms. There are going to be about 5 of you in each room. And you're going to get an invitation to enter the room. I would like for you to unmute yourself when you get into the room and then share with each other what did you take away from that video? Here's what I want you to focus on. What stood out to you? What are you taking away? And we're going to do that for about 5 minutes. And then you'll see a note pop back on your screen that says you're being asked to come back to the main room. And then we'll get started on the second part of the presentation. So here we go. Watch for that invitation. Thank you all for coming back. How was that? Was that good to get a few minutes to share? Let me start this PowerPoint here. Okay, I think everybody's coming back. Thumbs up if you enjoyed sharing or getting a chance to process that with each other. Great. All right. So I know a lot of you are probably thinking, or I don't know, and I would gauge this in the room maybe a little better, but I know when we first started this project several years ago, there was a lot of discussion around, how am I, maybe, some of you maybe have backgrounds in education or a little bit of teacher training or substitute training, But I know when we first started the project, there were a lot of folks who didn't have any knowledge about teaching, right, or tutoring. And there was sort of a focus on putting you folks in schools and helping kids raise academic ability, right, by tutoring and teach, helping with their math and helping with their English and their science. And while I think that that can be important, I'm not sure that that really has to be your primary focus, especially right now in 2020 as we're living through COVID. I really think it's about the ability that you have as a human to go in and build relationships with kids. Because just like in the video, right, no significant learning is going to happen for kids unless they have strong relationships, someone at that school, someone within the school setting that they feel connected to. So if you're sitting there, and you're doing this mentoring and you think, gosh, I'm not really skilled. Like I struggled with math. How am I supposed to help someone with math? Maybe it's not the math that's the most important thing. Maybe it's the relationship. And I'll tell you this, when I was at Marshall University getting a doctoral degree in curriculum and instruction, there were weeks after weeks that we would sit in classes and we'd look at research about what led to kids having success in school, right? Like, was it giving a lot of homework? Was it parental involvement? What were these things that made a difference for kids who were successful? And do you know, as we would tear research apart and tear articles apart and be super critical, the only thing that we ever found that made a difference for kids to be successful at school was either the relationship that they had, the quality of the teacher, or the relationship with the teacher. Now, some of you can probably relate. You may have had a problem at school relating to any of your teachers. Did anybody have that? Like you just didn't feel very connected to maybe any teachers at all. Okay, so maybe that's where you come in, right? If you're working with a mentee who really is not connecting with any of his or her teachers, maybe you're the person they connect with. So that's why I really wanted to focus today on, I'm not here to teach you how to tutor. I'm not here to teach you how to help kids with their spelling words. I want you to seek a better understanding about kids, why they present these challenges, and how you work around those challenges to help build relationships with them. It's sort of like this. And Dr. Pearson said it best in that video, right? Seek first to understand. These kids don't land on your mentoring caseload because they're the future valedictorians of these classes, right? True? Is that true? Right? Those are not the kids that are landing on your caseloads. The kids that are landing on your caseloads that need extra help and support, they have challenges. They have more challenges probably than the kids. Not that the valedictorians don't have challenges, but they have a lot more challenges. So how do we see? I want you to seek first to understand these kids you're working with. I want you to understand their behaviors. I want you to understand their backgrounds. If you don't try to understand what these kids are, where they're coming from, and what their need and what needs they have, you're going to be unconsciously incompetent. You're going to ignore the fact that these challenges exist, and you're probably not going to be very successful building relationships, right? You might even find yourself in a word battle with a kid, in a power struggle. You might get your feelings hurt. You might hurt their feelings, right? My job here today is to raise your level of consciousness. So at least if you mess up with kids, you can take a step back and go, why did I mess up with that kid? Why did we just end up in like this yelling match with each other? Why am I not connecting with this kid? What am I not getting? Eventually, I'd like for you to stay on this path to where you become consciously competent. You are very skilled at building relationships with kids because you have a clear understanding of why they behave and why they do certain things. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense. I want to try to get you to where you are aware of why kids have challenges, why they sometimes act out, why they have difficulty connecting with some adults. And then I want you to be the adult that can work with that and become the person that builds a relationship. So here's the first thing that you need to understand, right? And I'm going to keep saying this to you first, over and over today. Seek first to understand. When a child is in trouble at school, when they're not showing up to school, when they're fighting with peers, when they're in the face of teachers, all behavior is purposeful. Every single thing that a child does has a reason behind it. Now, if you ask a lot of teachers or parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, and I work with a lot of parents in counseling and parent training, and I say, all behavior is purposeful. Sometimes they'll laugh and go, oh yeah, I know what the purpose is. Their purpose is to drive me up a wall. right? I know exactly why he acts this way. It's to irritate the heck out of me. Have you ever heard a parent say that? Like, yeah, I know they're just out to, or a teacher, right? Yeah, I know their whole entire purpose in life is to make my life hard. It's really not that. There really are reasons based in behavior and learning theory about why kids behave and act out or misbehave or don't listen or talk back or say mean things. Like, all behavior that a child does is about them trying to get their needs met. So let's start this morning by looking at a couple of theorists, a couple people who have written about this, and try to understand. Let's try to raise our consciousness about why kids behave a certain way. Now, you have this handout in the things that Emily sent you. Here's where I want you to start with this. This is a guy named William Glasser, and he had a theory called, he wrote about a theory, he developed a theory called choice theory, okay? And you have this handout. If I had a kid that I was mentoring, and I was really struggling to understand this kiddo, I would start with this. If this kid seems angry, out of balance, not functioning well, getting in fights, being disruptive, acting out in class, I would start with this. What needs of this kid are not being met? Now, I want you to think of it this way. Here's how Glasser explained this. And you can even think about this for yourselves too. Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see me and you see my hand right here. Kristen, you see my hand? Okay, thank you. Think of this, Glasser's explanation about the basic needs, as a 5-legged stool, all right? If we've got a stool that has 5 legs and all 5 legs are equally functioning and all good, right? That stool is stable, yes? But think about this. What if we take one leg of the stool away? What starts to happen? It's a little shaky, right? Think about this. What if we take a second leg away? Now that 5-legged stool is standing on 3. Could stay stable, could tip over, right? But it's definitely off balance. Ooh, let's take another leg away. 5-legged stool now is on 2. What do you think is going to happen? Right? Okay, so if you're functioning at a high level, adults, kids, whoever, you pretty much have a pretty stable stool. You've got all 5 legs of this stool functioning at least pretty evenly. But here's the thing we know about kids in schools right now, right? And our kids from this, like I said, from the CDC, all 5 legs are not balanced. All 5 legs are not there. So when I have a kid that I'm struggling to connect with, I go to this list and I think, what need is not being met? And then I try to figure out how I can help fill the gap. All right. So let's talk about love and belonging. Every kid needs to feel like they belong somewhere. I encourage teachers to create that atmosphere in their classrooms. They need to create an atmosphere where kids feel loved, respected, like they have connection, they can share, and that they can cooperate. Now, you're not a classroom teacher. So what's my advice for you as a mentor? Maybe you're a single mentor in a school by yourself. We have done workshops, I've done for Emily in the past, where we talk about running small groups with your mentees. Maybe, and again, I don't know what you've been thinking about, but maybe right now you're just doing one-on-one mentoring. If you have several mentees that you're working with that you feel do not have a sense of love and belonging, you could form a group and do at least 1 session a week or 1 session every 2 weeks where you bring them all together. And they have, maybe you do activities where there's sharing and there's cooperation and they start to feel a sense of love and belonging. Now think about this, and this may be true for some of you. It looks like some of you are a little younger than me, so I want to honor that. When I was in public school, my teachers didn't have to worry about helping me get my love and belonging need met. Why? Because my parents did that for me at home. Some of you had parents at home that helped you fill that need, right? You felt loved and belonging at home. So if you came to school, that was cool. If you felt it, maybe it was not, it didn't matter. But think about all of our children in West Virginia right now who are not getting that at home, right? So school has to be a place that steps in to help kids feel loved and belonging. Let me say this. I'm not saying run around and hug kids all day, right? It's not that. Look at these other things on this list. They can feel included. They feel connected. They feel a sense of friendship. They can share. They can learn to cooperate. That fulfills that need. let's talk about power for a second, and we'll hit power again here in a few too. You, no matter what your age, when you go into a school building right now, you're the adult. Agreed? You're the adult. You inherently, as an adult walking into a school building, have a sense of power. Because when it comes down to it, you will always win every battle, right? If a kid acts out like just totally out of their mind, you're going to get help from an administrator or something, and you're going to win the battle. But look at this idea of power. Kids need to feel a sense of power and control. That involves feeling a sense of success, a sense of importance, and a sense of achievement, and the ability to show their skill level. So I want you to think about how, as a mentor, can I help kids achieve some power and control over their universe? We'll talk a little bit later more about this, and I'll come back to it. The idea of giving choices. The idea of giving choices can really help kids develop a sense of power. But look at this other piece about achievement too. I just want to focus that on, think about some of you in school. Well, let me use the example maybe of my son. And I don't know that this was necessarily good parenting as much as it happened by chance, and he was just lucky. Some kids get lucky. He had a good temperament. My son, Austin, was an achiever. He came home the first day of third grade and he said, "Mom, do you know that they give an award for perfect attendance? If you don't miss a day of school, you get an award at the end of the year for perfect attendance." And I said, "Well, yeah, I've heard of that. Like, I have heard of that." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to get that this year. I'm going to not miss a day of school." And I said, "Well, okay, that sounds great. But what if you're running a fever or you get sick? You might have to miss. And that's okay if you miss a day or two." "Nope, that's not happening. I'm not getting a fever this year. I'm going to go to school every single day." Okay. And you know what? He did it. Got perfect attendance third grade year. It meant every now and then you need a mental health day, but he was committed to going to school every day. So think about that. He set a goal. He got a certificate at the end of the year. Again, one year he won the talent show. One year, every year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, he made the high school baseball team. He had a sense of achievement, right? Think about all the kids you're working with that have never done anything like that. They've never experienced that. They've never gotten 100 on a spelling test. They've never got faithful attendance. They've never made a team, right? You as a mentor can help figure out how to build kids' strengths and skills so that they feel that sense of achievement. Connect with these kids, find out what they're good at, and see if you can help them explore that even more, right? Maybe this kid is good at tinkering with dirt bikes. Find a way in your mentoring to talk about that, to let that kid share their experience. Is that making sense? Find what they're good at and let them talk to you about it. Build on that. Find activities that you can give them to do around that thing that they like and enjoy. Let's talk about fun. You need to be having fun with these kids. Now, I don't necessarily mean every day is fun, right? Some days you want to help them with homework. Some days you want to help them achieve certain tasks that they need to get done. But do you do it with a sense of enjoyment and laughter, right? Think about that. I had a student teacher a couple months ago from a local college tell me that they had an issue with a fourth grade student in a classroom, and the teacher had a bad scene with this kid. And when the kid came back to school the next day after this terrible scene, she decided to sit down and ask this child, try to repair the relationship. And she asked this young man what he does for fun. When he gets off the bus and he goes home, right, at the end of the day, what do you do for fun? And I'm going to call on somebody here. Lacey, what do you think a fourth grade boy said he does when he gets off the bus at home? What does he do for fun in the evening?
Play video games.
Oh, okay. That is exactly where I went first. Probably play video games. Thank you. Okay. Dale, Dale's still with us? Dale, what do you think the fourth grade kid said?
Excuse me, ride his bike or play outside.
I went there in my mind too. Like, as she's telling me this story, I'm thinking, yeah, shoot basketball outside, play outside. Here's how the young man responded. Nothing. I do nothing. And the teacher thought that he had misunderstood the question. And so she clarified. She said, no, I don't really mean like, well, I know you don't like school. I mean, when you get home from school and you get off the bus, right? And she presented like you play outside, you play video games. And this 4th grade kiddo said, nothing. I get off the bus. I go to my room. I stay there until it's dinner time. I'm allowed to come out and have dinner. I'm allowed to take a bath, get a shower, do my homework, and I have to be in bed by 7:30. Think about that. 4th grade. Now, we're not going to get into a conversation about child protective services and removing kids and all that, but let me tell you about child protective services. They are overworked, they are overtasked, and the bar for keeping kids in their homes is extremely low. Child protective services is not going to remove a child from their home because it's not a very fun environment. Do you understand what I'm saying? You've got kids that are living with older grandparents who are struggling to raise them, grandparents who go to bed at 9 o'clock, at 9:30, right? They don't know how to entertain a 2nd grader, a 6th grader, a 7th grader. There are kids that live in addiction, homes where addiction is rampant. The opioid crisis is a thing. Those kids are not having much fun after they get off the bus. I want you to think about that. When you're mentoring these kids, does this kid have very much fun in their lives? If not, maybe that's a need that you help them meet when they're in that school building with you. Survival. We'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide as well. Emily can step in and scold me for this advice I'm going to give to you. You have to be smart about this, but you might be in a position where you're helping kids meet their basic needs. They may need a granola bar because they're hungry. If you check it out and they don't have allergies, right? They may need some fruit roll-ups if you've got an extra one in your pocket. Look at this. Food, warmth. Do you need to connect this kid with the school counselor? Do you need to connect this family with the school social worker just to help get their basic needs met? If you do that, that's going to help you build a relationship. My friend Wendy Imperial was a school counselor for years at Bridgeport Middle School, one of the highest, you think high, very low, low SES, right? High SES, doctors, lawyers, or whatever. I cannot tell you how many times she gave kids winter coats, food for the weekends, backpack programs. Years ago, they were running backpack programs for kids who didn't have enough to eat. But Wendy would also say this about kids. She didn't have a full-time school nurse, and the nurse's station was in the counselor office, and kids would come and need a Band-Aid, right? A basic need. I need a Band-Aid. I cut my finger. And Wendy would do it. And she would always say to me, I feel like if I give a kid a Band-Aid and we patch up that little hurt, they'll be willing to come back to me when there's a bigger hurt. That's building relationships. And then a sense of freedom. And here we see that word choices again, and independence. If you've got a couple of tasks that you're trying to accomplish with one of your mentees, let them choose which one to do first. Don't feel like you have to be the one controlling what they do and when they do it. Work with them collaboratively and say, so what you said was you'd really like help with this English paper and you'd really like help on this math assignment. Why don't you pick which one we do first? Because in here, when we're working together, you have the freedom to choose how you want your time with me to go. Let them have some say, let them have some independence right? Because what do a lot of adults in schools do with kids? All day long, kids are told what to do. You can be that one different person that helps them get their need of freedom met by saying, tell me how you want our time together to go, because I want to honor that you have the freedom to choose how our time can be structured. Okay, I'm going to stop share here for a second so I can see more faces. I'm interested in hearing from you. What are you thinking about Glasser's 5 basic needs and how it relates to you as a mentor? So I want you to be thinking about that. What are you taking away? Thinking about Glasser meeting those 5 basic needs. You can unmute your mic and share with me, or I can call on a couple of people if that doesn't get us anything. What are you thinking about? Let me see. I'm going to go to Melissa. Melissa, what's this got you thinking about? We can't hear you, Melissa. Are you with us, Melissa? We can't hear you. How about I'll pass and come back to you? Is that okay? Okay. Is there Sierra on? Maybe not. Kristen, how about you?
Okay, so one of the things that I liked from that was, you know, the kids don't have it at home, so you need to be that person for them that like kind of makes them happy and like makes it feel like that they belong.
Oh, we lost your audio for a sec. We lost you. We can't hear you. I can't hear her. Emily, can you?
Activities based on what they like and go from there. And I think it's like really important because like some of the kids that I work with, you know that they don't have it, and then you can tell like after you get like after they get comfortable with you, it's like they just seem like, I don't know, it's easier to work with somebody they feel comfortable with instead of like making it awkward. So if they like it and they're interested in it, then it's easier to work with them.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Jamie, how about you? What's this got you thinking about?
Mostly give them attention that they might not get at home. To show them that you care, you know, ask them what their hobby, you know, like what their hobbies would be. Maybe you can incorporate some of their hobbies with, you know, being with them.
That was helpful for you to hear that?
Yes.
Good, good. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like helping them do the math work, right? Maybe there's a more important thing that needs attended to, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Jordan, how about you? What's this got you thinking about?
I was going to say the same thing that Jamie said, finding what they like and then trying to incorporate that into activities so that they're more interested and engaged.
Awesome. Eva, thanks for turning your camera on. I'm anxious to hear what's this got you thinking about?
Can you hear me? I've had major issues. Like if I turn my camera on, then my speakers don't work. So I'm
You're
sorry.
good. You're good.
I've been there with the student that has went home and said they do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I done was find his interest, and his interest was music. So that it was a struggle for me, but he liked all kinds of music.
Yeah.
So I got literature and books and activities around music, and he would work on those in the evenings, and he really enjoyed, because there was a lot of history to music that he didn't know about. It was just he knew that he enjoyed music, so he gained a new appreciation, but he was actually going home and reading, increasing his reading skills.
I don't care what you're reading. Read about music, right?
Right. So
Right.
that was something. So if you have a student that says they have nothing when they go home, try to gather some things together so that they do have something.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about. Absolutely. Thumbs up if this is interesting or helpful so far. Are we doing something that's productive? Okay. I'm going back to sharing here. I want to show you this next screen. Can you see HALT on your screen? You see that word halt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's have a discussion about you and then about your students. And this goes back into the survival needs. So let's tie this together a little bit. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever flown on an airplane. Okay, if you've never flown on an airplane, one of the first things that happens right as the plane is starting to get ready to take off is a flight attendant will come on and they'll go over all these safety measures with you, right? And one of the main safety measures is that if the cabin loses oxygen, these oxygen masks are going to fall down out of the ceiling. And what they tell you to do is, before you go to help anybody that's traveling with you, like a young child or an elderly person, they tell you to put your mask on first. So let's talk about how you put your mask on first. This comes out of addictions work too. You are not going to be as good a mentor for that day if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. You're not going to be as open to connection if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So the first thing that you need to do, right, to be able to connect is to understand, are you off balance? Did you eat breakfast? Have you stopped for lunch? Have you drank a single drop of water all day? Are you exhausted? Look, everybody I know in my life right now is more exhausted than normal because of what they're dealing with COVID, right? Like going to the grocery store takes more energy, right? You get halfway in the door and realize you forgot your mask. You turn around to the car, you go back to get your mask. Like it's just, everything is harder, right? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you out of balance with a personal relationship, with a love relationship, with your family? Are you going to school into your mentoring situation angry and lonely? Now, look, this is not a personal growth workshop by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not here to be your therapist. You can take care of hungry and tired. There's no good excuse on your part to not put your oxygen mask on first when it comes to hungry and tired. You need to prioritize feeding yourself. You need to prioritize your sleep if you want to be the best mentor you can be. If you're angry and lonely, I encourage you to talk to someone that can help you figure out how to solve those for yourself. Because here's what I know. The kids that you're working with are angry and lonely. And if you don't know how to feed that for yourself, you're not going to be able to help them. You're not going to be able to connect with them as good as you can if you figure it out for yourself. Right? Put your mask on first. Get not angry, get not lonely, get some counseling, get a friendship group, get a support group, get something going where you achieve that need for yourself so that you don't feel disconnected and you're not going into that relationship angry and lonely. So that you got to feed yourself first. Now, let's look at that from the other side. Once you have figured out the balance where you're not hungry, you're not angry, you're not lonely, you're not tired, here's the next piece. Think about that for the kids you're working with, right? Again, there are rules to go by in school about food. I get it. You've got to be super careful about giving a kid anything with nuts in it or a nut, like there are allergies. Those things are real, like those issues are real. But sometimes you're going to connect with a kid by feeding them food because they're hungry. If you do it safely, do it. Right? Didn't you hear Dr. Pearson say her 92-year-old mother spent her years as a teacher having peanut butter and crackers and things in her desk drawer to feed kids? Because she knew that if they see her as someone that can help fill their basic needs, that builds a relationship. And that's what matters. I'm not here to say, hey, bring kids in for mentoring and let them take a nap. I'm not here to say that. But think about this. If you have a kid come into school, one of your mentees, and there was a big domestic thing at their house last night and dad got arrested or mom went off to jail or somebody disappeared or their sister ran away and the cops were there and there wasn't, they were up all night and they were anxious and they're tired. And they come into they come into this room where you're going to do your session with them and they are exhausted. Maybe you let them take a 5-minute nap. Maybe, I don't know. Look, watch me, look at me on the screen. Here's the box. I want you to be able to think outside of it. You know what I mean by that? The school rules would say, well, you can't just pull kids out of class and let them nap. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are times when the kid may need a 5-minute nap because they had a rough night. In West Virginia, we have a program called Handle with Care that Booth Goodwin, who was the Southern District Attorney for West Virginia, started. Anybody thumbs up if you've heard of Handle with Care? Handle with Care is a program that's supposed to be active in all 55 counties, where if the police intervene the night before in a domestic situation at a home where there's a school-age child on the premises, they're supposed to notify the school system that that child that day may need a nap. They may be hungry. They may be off balance because something bad happened at their home the night before. If you can connect with your school counselor in your building, with your administrator, and ask that question, are we participating in Handle with Care? Or ask the question, how does Handle with Care work in this school? It might help you get in the loop in case any of your kids are subject to a Handle with Care call. Wouldn't that be important to know? That one of the kids you're working with had a domestic incident at their house last night, and it may be affected one, if not all 4 of these elements of their functioning. That would allow you to better attend to that. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, Handle with Care. So all of you are going to check on that with your schools and your school administrators. Okay, I'm going to stop share here for a second. We're going back into breakout rooms. So I'm going to put you back in there. Here's what I want you talking about. What are you thinking about HALT? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. How are you attending to those needs right now for your kids? Or how do you think you want to maybe do that differently moving forward? Or how do you maybe need to do that for yourself? That's what you're going to talk about. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes in your breakout rooms, but you're thinking about hungry, angry, lonely, tired, building relationships. Stay on that theme, okay? So you're going to get an invitation to go to your breakout room. And I will communicate with you through messages about when it's time to come back. Did you all get invitations? Molly, Trent, Ashley, do you need invitations?
Yes.
Let me see, Molly, where did you? I'm going to put you in a room, Molly. Here you go. Ashley, do you need an invitation? Ashley, are you there? Hi, Karen.
Hello. Sorry, I'm having technical issues.
That's okay. They're going to come out of breakout rooms here in about a minute, so I'll probably just leave you here if that's okay.
Okay.
You seem good right now, though. I can hear you. I can see you.
Yeah, well, I was on my phone and because I wasn't near my computer and I couldn't get it to, come on here. I couldn't get it to connect on my phone through Zoom.
Yeah.
I've been having issues because my other meeting was with Zoom and I couldn't get it to.
You're fine. Have you been listening? You've been good, though. Is this helpful?
No, I can't get anything.
Oh, okay.
I'm like
So you're
completely lost.
you're just now joining us then.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like, oh no.
Well, she's recording it, so hopefully you can go back and pick up the first part.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to bring the others back.
Okay.
I think you all must be having good conversations because you're hanging out into those breakout rooms until you get time warped back to me. So that's always a good sign, teaching on Zoom, that folks are talking and sharing. So I hope that's valuable. I know sometimes when you come to a training like this, I mean, I do a lot of trainings all over the country outside of COVID, but sometimes professionals like yourself say the best thing that they do all day is just the opportunity to share with each other. So I hope you're having a chance to do that and take advantage of that. There are two more major things I want to cover before our time runs out today. So I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint. You have some handouts in relation to the first thing we're going to talk about, and that's a theorist by the name of Alfred Adler and why he says that kids struggle to behave or follow a line or succeed. So we're going to look at Adler, and then we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about trauma. And I know y'all are probably hearing a lot about the word trauma, and I don't want to preach to you about trauma, but there are just a couple of things that I want to cover with you there. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to talk about Alfred Adler. Okay, so here's what this guy Adler says. This is why kids have challenges. Again, all behavior is purposeful, but he said that kids either see themselves as very discouraged or very encouraged. A lot of kids come to school encouraged. They don't end up on your mentee rolls, right? Because they're getting their needs met. I would propose that a lot of kids end up on your mentee rolls because they are very discouraged. if you want to understand the difficulties that students have, you need to understand why they're behaving the way they are and what their view of the world is. Are they encouraged or discouraged? Now, you have a cool handout on this. Well, why is my thing not? Technology, great when it works. Why am I frozen? Here we go. Emily sent you a handout that goes into a lot more detail on this, and I'm going to tell you how to use it. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes to cover the general thing that Adler says here, okay? He says that when a student is acting out, struggling, not being successful, he calls it misbehavior. I don't know. As I get older, I don't like that word. It's when kids behave in ways that we would really rather them not behave, it is typically for one of these 4 reasons. And again, this goes back, this ties into Glasser, right? This is kids have needs. They have a need for attention. So a child might act out with a teacher, with a parent, with you, because they need attention. Here's what's so great about Adler. If I'm seeking first to understand why a child is behaving a certain way, here's the key. I got to tap into how I feel when the child does that behavior. And that's where the Adler stuff I think is so cool. So Melissa, I'm looking at your picture. So here's the thing. If you're working with a kiddo, right? And they won't listen and they won't do what you're asking them to do and they won't do that, and you start feeling annoyed, right? And you go, I'm so annoyed with this kid right now. Like, what in the world? That's a trigger for you to go, this is attention seeking. And it doesn't matter. You can say, well, I give a kid all kinds of attention. I spent half the day yelling at them and fighting with them. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter if it's negative attention. Negative attention is better than no attention. So even when you're annoyed and aggravated and yelling and screaming and whatever's going on, they're getting your attention. So if you tap into your emotions and you go, I'm so annoyed right now, then you can go, this is attention seeking. Now, a lot of you have probably heard, well, if they're doing a behavior that you don't like and you think, and it's for attention, just ignore it and it'll go away. Not necessarily true. Ignoring a behavior that you don't want is only one of the steps. The other step is to acknowledge that kid when they do a behavior that you do want. So it's not enough to say, I'm just going to ignore that they're tapping their pencil on the desk. You've got to find the 5 seconds when they quit tapping the pencil on the desk and say, I noticed you've been sitting there working so quietly for the last 10 minutes. Boy, that feels so good to me. I bet that feels really good to you, right? You have to acknowledge the behavior that you want, not just ignore the behavior that you're trying to eliminate. Thumbs up, everybody, if that's making some sense. Now, on the worksheet that Emily sent to you, there's a much longer explanation of this. I encourage you to download that goals of misbehavior chart, that worksheet, look through the typical responses, look through more appropriate responses, and work through that worksheet. Power. Everybody on this call I know has heard that term. Getting in a power struggle with a person, getting in a power struggle with a kid, right? You've heard that term. When you feel angry, that's a power struggle. It's very different from attention. If a kid is going, you can't make me, I'm not going to, you're not the boss of me, right? You can't make me. And you're sitting there going, listen here, kid, I'm going to win this. So you better just give in right now because I'm going to win. I'm the adult here and I'm going to win. Remember how we talked about you inherently have the power because you're the adult. Yes? Remember how we talked about that? You're getting angry. This is a power struggle. Yes, you can win the battle. You can get that kid to go back to class, go to the principal's office, get detention, get suspended for being nasty to you or whatever, right? You win. Congratulations. You win the battle. But here's the deal. This is about building relationships. And you just lost the war. Because you lost trust with that kid. You damaged that relationship. Now you got to spend time repairing it, if they're even open to you repairing it. Here's my advice to you. Read about, look at that chart, Google giving choices. Giving choices can help you get yourself out of a power struggle and save the relationship. And I'm not talking about the choices, do your work or don't do your work. That's not the choice I'm talking about, right? Remember what we talked about a little earlier with Glasser. The choice can be, we've got 2 things to accomplish. Which one would you like to work on first? I don't want to do either. I hear what you're saying. I would like to help you make a choice. That's a choice. You can choose not to do anything, but that's not going to benefit you when you go back to class. My job is to help you figure out how to have the best benefit when you get back to class. This is something you get to decide. In here, when you're working with Miss Kristen, you can decide, right? I want to work on some math, or I want to read some history about the music I read last. You know, you can have the choices in here. You can have control of that. I don't know if any of you have heard this yet. If you stay in education very long, you will hear it. You will hear, you are the worst human being that has ever walked the face of the earth. If you're a parent, you haven't heard it yet, eventually you're going to hear you're the worst mother, you're the worst father, you're the worst human being, right? I hate you. Oh, if you're a parent, that's a good one, right? That gets you. I hate you. Yeah, and you're like, yeah, I hate you too. Why did I give birth to you, spawn of Satan, right? If you haven't heard that one yet, boy, that's a tough one, right? Because it gets you here. Teachers here, you're the worst teacher I've ever had. Ouch. Look, if you're getting your feelings hurt, that is revenge. That is typically a kid who is so hurt on the inside over something, maybe probably at home, right? That they're coming to school and they're vomiting that on someone that is safe to vomit it on. That is you. Congratulations. You have that kind of relationship that they can vomit that on you and not feel unsafe to do it, right? A middle schooler is not going to come to school and say, so here's the deal. I'm a little anxious today. My parents are divorcing. My dad is probably heading off to jail. And I'm just in such a tizzy right now. And I didn't take my Zoloft this morning. So just before we get started, I just need you to know that I'm really off balance. Is that what a kid's going to say to you? A kid's going to say, I hate you. I hate you. You're awful. Everybody here is awful. My life is awful. And you're part of that awfulness. And you're like, I just said hello. Like, I don't know what that, like, I just said hi. Don't know. Don't get your feelings hurt. Don't take it personally. Use reflective listening. I'm sorry you feel that way. I want you to know I'm here for you. It sounds like you're having a rough day. I'm sorry you feel that way. Is there anything I can do to help your day get better? Making sense? And then last, when you are working with that kid and you see this happening in that kid's universe, or you're feeling this, like, I don't know, I give up. I don't know. Right? If you ever feel that feeling of throwing your hands up in the air, that kid is displaying inadequacy. In that term, they are discouraged. Are you with me? They are discouraged. Rita Pearson talks about this in the video. Negative 18 sucks all the life out of you. Encouragement is saying +2 and a smiley face. You're not all bad. Now you have a handout that Emily sent to you that gives you very specific examples of how you can use encouraging language. The difference between praise and encouragement is very powerful. Look at that handout, research it, learn to do the difference. Praise signifies an external locus of control. If kids are only praised, then they only do things they have to do because they get a reward for it, right? And in some ways, we're at risk of raising little praise junkies. I'm only going to do this worksheet because you tell me I did a good job. I'm only going to paint this picture because you tell me it's a good picture. I did a good job. Encouragement, switching the way we talk to kids and using encouragers, switches that to, I'm going to do this painting because it feels good to me. So you as the mentor are going to say, you worked really hard on that picture. You put a lot of time in that. That must feel good to you, right? See the subtle difference? And you think, oh my gosh, this is counseling hooey. Kids don't care about that. It makes a difference. It says +2, you're not all bad. -18, I've given up. So look at that handout that Emily sent you on praise versus encouragement. Please take a time to you have a lot of kids that need you to use encouragers versus praise. The other good thing about that 4 goals, that mistaken goals chart that Emily sent out to you is if you flip it over to the second page, it provides a little walkway where if you're struggling with a kid, it will walk you through getting you to think about what do you think the goal of the misbehavior is and how do you think maybe you need to work to respond to it differently. Okay. I'm going to stop. Maybe I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know. Maybe I won't. Here we go. Okay. I stopped sharing. Are people seeing the whole screen? Can you see each other now? Okay. Maybe there was a glitch. I hope you could see my screen. I don't know. It's kind of messed up, but. All right. Talk to me about 4 goals of misbehavior. What are you learning? What's making sense? What was just helpful about that segment on the 4 goals of misbehavior? You can unmute or I can call on a couple folks. I always like to give you the option first to unmute by choice. Is it Alicia or Alicia? Tolliver? Alicia Tolliver? Oh, she may not have a good connection. Or Karen, you just joined us there a little bit ago. Was this part interesting to you?
It was. Did you speak last year?
I did.
Okay, I thought so, because I really enjoyed your group. I come from a psychology degree, and I've not used it much until I started this program last year. So this is like a really good refresher, just to use within my own kids between back and forth with remote learning, and now they're back in school. So I think this is something great to use, towards adults and children as well, as a great refresher.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Dale, tell me about, is this interesting, helpful? Are we doing something productive?
Yes, I think it's awesome. And I think every one of the mentors should be learning a lot to be able to help when they're working with their kids. So it's awesome that you're doing it for us. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope it's helpful. Caitlin, are you on with us? Caitlin Adkins?
Yes, I am.
Is this being helpful?
Yes, it is. This is only my 2nd year doing this. So all of this, like what you're saying, is really giving me a new perspective as to what to do to help my children and make sure they can better themselves for the future.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Look, my goal is always, I don't want to patronize or preach. I'm never doing that. And let me say this to all of you. Hear me very clearly when I say this. If what you are doing is working with the kids you're mentoring, don't change a thing. Don't change a thing. If what you're doing is working and having good results, I'm not asking you to change a thing. I just want to give you the tools to be able to tap into those situations where maybe it doesn't go well, right? Or you think, gosh, I could do better with this one particular kid. Maybe I'm going to increase my understanding. Seek first to understand. And if I increase my understanding, maybe it helps me build the relationship with that one I'm struggling with. But whatever you're doing that's working and it's legal and it's ethical, right? And it involves, not being silly, doing dumb stuff, keep doing that. I'm okay with you being silly, just don't do illegal and unethical, right? Here's the box. Here's the box. I teach this in my counseling. I teach counseling, I teach group counseling. When we're working with youth and adolescents, we can't stay in the box. The box is too restrictive. Think outside the box, right? Think about using music to get kids to read because they like music. I have a colleague at the University of New York, Manhattan. His name is Dr. Ian Levy. He is building a whole school counseling, former school counselor. He's a counselor educator now. He's building his whole research and his whole life's work about hip hop and spoken word therapy with kids in schools. Because traditional therapy was not reaching his minority students in the Bronx. He said this doesn't work for them, right? But what he found was that getting them to write rhymes and getting them to record music got them connecting, got him building a relationship. Ian didn't say, well, here's the box, right? Like I got to just listen and talk to kids. He said, no, that's the box. The box doesn't cut it for the kids I'm working with. He went way outside the box. And now there's a whole hip hop and spoken word therapy that we use in school counseling. I'm not great at it. But Ian comes and talks to my students who are going to be school counselors in Appalachia about, well, how does this translate to the kids that you work with? A lot of kids like to write rhyme and write song, and they're never given that platform to do that because we got to stick to the box. So that's what I'm saying. Like if what you're doing is working and you found creative ways to reach kids, don't change a thing. But if you're struggling, these concepts may help you understand those kids better. Fair enough? Thumbs up if that's making sense to you. Okay. We've got about 9 minutes left. So I just want to share, I'm going to do one more thing here. Try to get this screen share a little better. Can you see that slide on trauma? Kristen, can you see that? Thank you.
Yes.
I know you all are hearing this word. We could probably do 2 or 3 hours on this, but I just am going to touch on it. If you don't know much about how trauma is impacting the kids that you're working with, you need to do a little research on that. I know Emily's worked to get some training in to help you understand trauma. Let me show you, I'm going to talk to you about this. Give me a thumbs up if you have heard of the ACEs survey. Adverse childhood experiences. Let me tell you what trauma does, and I'm going to show it to you this way. This is called the hand model of the brain, all right, with the brain stem, prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, right? We can kind of do this as the hand model. Maybe some of you have seen this. This is Dr. Daniel Amen's hand model of the brain. When a child or an adolescent or any of us experience trauma, okay, this is the brain being calm, right? When we experience a traumatic event, the brain does this, pow, like that. It fires all these neurons with cortisol levels, okay? So let's take this example. Lacey and I are walking across the street downtown Charleston. We're going to get a bite to eat, and we're going to cross the road right there at the town center mall. And Lacey goes to step out into the middle of the road, and there's a bus coming. And I grab her by the arm and I pull her back real quick. Lacey, I just saved your life, right? But you go, oh my God, I about died, right? Your brain went like this, oh, I about died. And cortisol is going boom, 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 like that. All right. And then I grab you by the arm and I say, God, are you okay? Like that was close. Well, you almost died. Like, wow. And you're like, oh yeah, thanks. Oh, thanks for pulling me back. Let's go to Red Lobster and eat. Right. But here's the thing. If you're a kid living in a house with a lot of domestic issues, a lot of violence, community violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual abuse, physical abuse, food insecurity, parents incarcerated, okay? Lacey, you know how you had that feeling that the bus about hit you? They live all day long with their brain like that. All day long, those cortisol levels are pumping through their brain and their brains are like this all the time. Constant state of fight or flight, right? That changes your brain. It changes the chemistry and the makeup of your brain, all right? Some kids are coming to you with high ACEs scores, okay? The ACEs survey basically covers 10 things that people experience. If they've experienced these 10 things, any of these 10 things over the course of their lives, it tells us that they've spent a significant amount of time with their brain firing like this. So if you have a score of 3 or higher on your ACEs survey, that tells me something about your behavior. It helps me understand who you are. It helps me understand why when a kid reaches across the aisle in school and simply wants to borrow a pencil, you punch them in the face. Because look, I have a very low ACEs score. My ACEs score is probably 1. I was raised by a functional alcoholic father, so I get a 1, right? I would sit in school, Karen would reach across the aisle, poke me in the shoulder and go, let me have a pencil. And I would go, oh, you're so annoying. Here's a pencil, right? But another kid who has an ACEs score of 4 is sitting there in fight or flight, and they're sitting there not understanding their math. And Karen taps them and goes, hey, give me a pencil. I'm going to go, bam, and smack him in the face. Stop it. Oh, trauma helps me understand that. That kid doesn't do it just because they're a jerk. I mean, maybe they're a jerk, but they probably are doing it because of a high ACEs score. They've had a lot of trauma in their lives. If you've not studied up on trauma, if Emily struggles, I think Emily, you've got it on Slate, or you're doing more trauma training. You need to understand how this plays a part in your mentees' behaviors and in their life functioning. And then once you understand that, I would encourage you to read more. I'm going to show you this slide as we're running out of time. I want you to go online and read about protective factors. The one thing that we know for kids who experience trauma, that we can, as adults in their lives, implement these protective factors that help them build resilience to overcome the trauma, to help repair the brain, like teaching kids grit, how to not give up on a difficult task, proactive orientation, teaching them how their self-talk can help control their feelings, emotions, and behaviors. Teaching them self-regulation. Some of you are probably into mindfulness, teaching kids how to use the Calm app, the Insight Tumor, Headspace app to calm themselves, to center themselves, building a sense of community for kids. Proactive parenting. Are you their parents, these mentees? No, but you can be a one safe, caring adult that they feel comfortable coming to. That's a protective factor. So we've got, trauma plays a part in understanding these kids. And if we understand that kids have experienced a lot of trauma, then we understand that it's our job to build in protective factors as the people that care for them in their community to help them build resilience and overcome trauma. Now that is 7 minutes on something that we could spend probably a half a day on, but I just want to whet your appetite for that. And hopefully some of you I want to learn more about that. I want to learn more about that protective factors thing. I want to learn more about trauma. And I think if you get hungry to learn that and you go out on the internet and you start reading about that, it's going to really help you understand your kids a lot better. Again, I have a very strong belief that the kids that are ending up on your mentee roles have high ACEs scores. Would you agree with that? They've been subject to domestic abuse, taken away from a parent, had food insecurity, suffered physical abuse or sexual abuse or neglect, or been, I mean, just right now, raise your hand. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing because I want to see this. How many of you know right now, the majority of the kids on your mentee list have experienced divorce or separation of the two major caregivers in their lives? You know you have at least one kid. Okay, so those kids right there have an ACEs score of 1 right off the bat. So we know it's affecting the kids you're working with. It's our job to understand how that affects them and what we can do to build in those protective factors to help them. Does that make sense? All right, so here's what we're gonna do. If you got a piece of paper in front of you or just a little note, just a simple piece of paper, I want you to write, I'm gonna have you write something. So you need a pencil, pen, something to write with, and a little piece of scrap paper. I want you to write a word, a single word, or a very short phrase of what you're taking away from this hour and a half. A single word or a very short phrase. What are you taking away from this hour and a half? The word may not mean anything else to anybody once you speak it, and that's okay, but it means something to you. And I want everybody to go ahead and unmute. And I'm going to call on you. So go ahead and unmute. And once I call on you and you share, then you can remute yourself. Okay, Crystal, what you got? What's your word or your phrase?
I put strength.
Say that again.
Strength.
Okay. Karen, word or phrase?
New communications.
Kristen.
I put patience and understanding.
Jordan.
I put show care for your students.
Lacey. You're muted, Lacey.
Sorry, I put that there's a reason behind certain actions.
Alicia.
Strength and respect.
Dale.
2%.
Jamie.
Be patient with your students, they'll come around.
Melissa.
I put caring.
Brittany.
I put patience.
Caitlin.
I put caring.
Molly.
I put caring.
Trent.
Patience.
Jaleesa.
Friendship.
And Sierra. We may have lost her. Emily, I'm coming to you. Last but not least, did you get a word or a phrase?
Be encouraging.
My time is up with you for today. I hope this was helpful. Emily, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. We appreciate your time.
Do you need me to return host control or give up host control?
Nope.
Okay. Everybody have a great day. The work you do is important. Hang in there, okay?
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Chris.